Recording.
Okay, so here's my note cards.
We're all still here. Angie puts on the happy.
Okay, so it's getting to be pretty cold outside, and it's really sad that it's not even winter, and I'm already thinking about spring. To me, nothing sets off spring like the sound of motorcycles roaring up and down the street. I used to ride a bike, and I really loved it. I know everyone here has rode a bike. Some of you guys have been drivers, some of you guys have just been passengers, but we've all been on a bike before. I know whenever I rode a bike, I always wore a helmet, and not everybody does. Did you guys know only 20 states in the U.S. have mandatory helmet laws? Illinois is a state that doesn't require you to wear helmets. I actually found this really odd since there's a mandatory seatbelt law here in Illinois. So Illinois actually used to have a mandatory helmet law back in 1969. That helmet law was short-lived and overturned that same year in the case of People versus Fries. They found it was unconstitutional and it violated the 14th Amendment. It was an abuse of police power to make motorcyclists wear helmets. So this is really weird because why are helmets any different than seatbelts? They're really not. They're both preventative safety measures for motorcyclists, or for motorists. So in 1986, the seatbelt law was challenged. But there was a different verdict because there were different judges that were on the Illinois Supreme Court in 1986 than the ones in 1969. So they came back with this different verdict saying that seatbelts were not unconstitutional, despite the precedence that was set in the case of People versus Fry back in 1969. So why would they do this? They did it because they knew that seatbelts were an important safety equipment and that they needed to do what was in the best interest of the people, and that was having safety equipment for people who were out on the road. There's been a couple attempts, back in 2010 was one, to try and reinstate the helmet law, but it hasn't been passed. They're working on trying to get it put into place again. So I know everyone here wears a seatbelt when they're in the car. We buckle up our small kids when they're in the car. Do we do this because it's the law? No, we do it because it's safe. We do not want our children in the back of the car getting thrown from the vehicle when we get into an accident. Helmets should be held to that same standard. I've heard several arguments against helmets that I actually think are quite silly, but they're arguments that people have for the reasons why it shouldn't be mandatory. First is, it's uncomfy to wear a helmet. They're hot, they're heavy. Well, I can't think of anything more comfortable than my head slamming on the pavement. That, to me, is uncomfortable. Not wearing a helmet, not so bad when you think of the alternative. Another thing people say is they're expensive. So the Snell Memorial Foundation was created to establish helmet safety standards. You can get a Snell-approved helmet for $100. Of course, you can get one for $400 too. The only difference between a $100 and a $400 helmet is the design and the bells and whistles. It's not the actual safety features that are different. So if you're willing to spend $25,000 on your brand new Harley, a $100 purchase for a helmet is a drop in the hat. Another thing that people say is that it impairs their peripheral vision. Having a helmet on, they can't see the cars that are on the side of them, so that's why they don't want to wear it. Well, let me tell you, they have several different styles that offer different visibilities. They have the full face mask, which may impair your peripheral vision and you might not prefer it. But then they have the smaller ones that just go around your head that don't mess with your peripheral vision at all. It's really just a tactic for people who feel that wearing a helmet is not cool, and so they make up an invalid argument. So the last argument I actually find to be the most comical out of all of them, and that's the people who say, when you're out on a motorcycle doing 40 miles an hour, a helmet's not going to save your life. Okay, that may be true. Not every time you get in an accident is the helmet going to save you, but it's a preventative safety measure. It's like seatbelts. A seatbelt's not always going to save your life when you get into an accident. In fact, we have seatbelts on airplanes. If you're 1,000 miles up in the air and you crash your airplane, the seatbelt's probably not going to save you. But we have them on there because it's a preventative measure. It may save your life. Or if you're in turbulence, that seatbelt's going to hold you in place and keep you safe during turbulence. Same thing with a motorcycle accident. If it's not a devastating crash, that helmet may protect you and it's going to save you from brain injuries. So again, it's a preventative measure. It's not a guarantee, but any of the safety equipment that we have in cars and airplanes are also not guarantees. They're all preventative measures. So I think it's important that we look at some statistics and facts, because you can go back and forth and argue with the he said, she said, they're not, I can't see, this and that. So statistics are something you cannot argue with. So let's see how helmets are doing actually preventing motorcyclists from dying or getting brain injuries. According to the Illinois Department of Transportation, motorcycles are only 3% of all accidents out on the road. However, they account for 14.3% of the fatalities that are happening out on the road. So knowing this, we know that being on a motorcycle is a lot more risky than being in a car. So if you're going to put on a seatbelt and you're going to get airbags in your car, why wouldn't you get a helmet? You know there's a lot greater risk for injury when you're on a bike. Another statistic in 2008 from IDOT showed that 75% of motorcycle fatalities, these people were not wearing helmets. So that's saying 25% of the people that died had helmets on, but 75% of the people who are dying did not. So which pool do you want to be in? Do you want to be that 75% risk category, or would you rather be in that smaller 25% population and have a better chance for survival? The most interesting study I actually found was the Center of Disease Control. They did a study on motorcycle accidents between 2008 and 2010. What they were comparing is how fatalities varied between the states that had helmet laws and the states that didn't. What they found was the states that didn't have helmet laws were 88% of the fatalities. So out of 14,000 deaths, 88% of them were happening in states that did not have mandatory helmet laws. When you're looking at a statistic like that, how can you not argue that helmets aren't saving lives? Obviously they are, because in the states that are requiring people to wear helmets, there's less people dying. Helmets are like seat belts. They're a good safety tool. They're not a guarantee, but they're out there to keep you safe. Don't leave your safety in the hands of the state. Wear a helmet, not because you have to. Do it because it's your choice and it's the smart choice to make.